Welcome from across the internet. I'm Rich Mayo and this is Mach 1 Games. I just want to talk about something that is not disappearing from the RPG conversation, especially as it relates to Dungeons and Dragons, and that's whether or not we should be applying negative bonuses or penalties to ability scores for certain races. So based on race, should we be applying negative modifiers? And what I'd like to do is, in order to understand any question, I'd like to break it down into something specific. So let's talk about the specific question, so we can go back to the general in a moment. The specific question: if I have a character race that is between 2 and 3 feet tall, should that character race be given a penalty to their strength score? So a very specific race that's between 2 and 3 feet tall and their strength score. Now, in order to answer this question, I actually need to back up a little bit, because Dungeons and Dragons is freaking awful at defining their terms. So much like we have armor class, which is an amalgam of resistance and your defensive abilities, and we have hit points that are an amalgam of luck and stamina and health and condition of your character, we're going to find that ability scores also are an amalgam. And if you read the player's handbook for D&D 5th edition, it's going to say something to the effect of an ability score is a measure of both talent and training. So it's right there in the description that we have an amalgam stat. So strength is the combination of power, athleticism, and training. So that when a character has a high or a low score in strength, we don't know which one of those three aspects we're talking about. So when we have a small character, the problem that we have is that being small is a disadvantage. It is correlated negatively to power, developing raw power. However, when it comes to agility and athleticism, there's a positive correlation, because a smaller creature has a greater strength to weight ratio. Therefore, they are naturally more proportionally athletic. And having been a heavyweight wrestler, I know whereof I speak. You watch the lightweights, and the lightweights are the most dynamic and technical because they have the highest strength to weight ratio of any of the divisions. And the third category that is baked into the strength score is training, which is not correlated one bit to size. So the first question we're asking is, should strength be modified because of size? We immediately encounter the problem that we have an amalgam measurement. So let's step aside from that and deal with another way of looking at it. Well, how is strength used in the game? Strength, along with intelligence, has been deprioritized in Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. Charisma has been accelerated, and obviously I think you've heard my pet theory that that has to do with the YouTube generation and social media, and it's an effect of the cultural zeitgeist, as Carl would say, upon the game, and that dexterity and charisma have been overinflated and elevated. But getting back to my point, so the other thing that we need to look at is how it's used in the game. So strength can be used for making melee attacks. However, we could substitute dexterity as long as the weapon isn't too large. The other and only skill that strength affects is athletics. And we look at the athletics skill and we understand immediately that we've got the same problem, because jumping, climbing are both affected by strength. And one would say a smaller character should be better at climbing, maybe worse at jumping physical distance because they're short. And you see immediately that we've got a problem, that sometimes it's a win and sometimes it's a loss. And then for the melee damage, we also have grappling rules, which are going to be a strength contest. And again, that might be a little problematic. So let me introduce the third concept that I want to talk about. Rather than just looking at what a game designer says about the rules, we have to look at how the rules actually play at the table. Dungeons and Dragons is built on this linear system with a d20 with a plus or minus. Now, the maximum stat adjustment for any mortal creature in the game is +5, and the maximum stat penalty is -5. So even with a +5, -5 discrepancy, what you end up with is that a character with a score of 20 in strength versus a character with 1 in strength only has about an 84% success, 86% success rate. Should be 55 over 400, whatever that works out to be. Let me just explain the math a little bit. Just conceive it as, imagine that we're going to make 400 rolls. And then we're going to then stipulate, because each roll is the same probability, the person with the high strength is going to roll 20 times, 19 20 times, 18 20 times. They're going to roll all 20 times. And that gives us 400 outcomes. And then everything that they score 11 or higher is an automatic win, because 11 plus 5 is 16. So they're beating the maximum of 20 minus 5 right off the bat. Maximum of that is 15. So we look at the other cases and we look to see, well, if they roll a 1, 1 plus 5 becomes a 6. Which means that the character needs to score an 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 to beat that score. So there's 10 opportunities. And then if they roll a 2, there's 9 opportunities to beat it. And then 3, 8, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's a sequence of numbers. Then all you do is you flip those numbers. You put the 10 with the 1 to get 11. You put the 9 with the 2 to get 11. You put the 8 with the 3, the 7 with the 4, and the 6 with a 5, and now you've got your pairs. You have all these pairs of 11. You got 5 pairs of 11. 5 times 11 is 55. So 55 out of those 400 times, if you do it up as a matrix. The character with the 1 score, Stephen Hawking, pushes Theodore Bjornsson around. And so that conceptualization of how you're going to use the score is built into the D&D mechanism, and that doesn't make a lot of sense. That is already putting a really weird spin on the reality. I mean, there wouldn't be much point in watching the Olympics in this kind of paradigm. So once we understand that the mechanisms for Dungeons and Dragons is kind of odd, Then we look to the other use of strength. So using it for a skill fires into this D20 mechanism. It's kind of funny. But the other use of the core stat is for your class abilities. So you're going to have abilities that tie off your ability score. And this is where it becomes highly punitive to reduce a character's score in a core feature, because it's going to take away from the class that they want to play. So now we look at, in this scenario, taking strength away from the small character is going to take any strength-based class, if there are any left, off the table. And we can recycle this conversation with the other types of ability scores, because they're from this specific example we can find patterns, and I don't mean to make a 10-hour video exposing all the problems with the with each statistic. Now, you might be formulating an argument in your head, something to the effect of, well, Rich, you don't know whether it's talent, training, or natural athleticism. So you don't know if it's power, athleticism, or training, but one can infer that at the very top, at the pinnacle, at that 20, you must be high in all three, and a small character just cannot be high in all three. That's an excellent argument for an ability score reduction. However, what I would say is it's absolutely unfair, unfun, and uninteresting to apply logic to a system that I've shown has such problems with it, that it's so nonsensical to begin with. First, we don't know what the frick we're talking about when we're talking about an ability score. And second, the main function of the ability score, if you look at the skill check, well, the skill check uses a sort of absurd abstraction mechanism for determining outcomes. So it's saying that, oh, well, now let's apply logic to it is a bit unfair and it's a bit unkind, when the real reason why people need ability scores is for the things that tie to their character class and who and what they want to play. So you can see that I'm building up an argument saying, given the limitations of Dungeons and Dragons, it is absolutely, and I've been advocating this for a long time, it is absolutely asinine to think that we should be giving penalties or forcing players to allocate their stats to certain combinations. It's in my 10 worst rules of D&D. I've done another video talking about this. I just responded on Facebook to a comment, so I decided, hey, I'm going to run down into the basement and do a video on this. So now we have this paradigm, and the argument that I'm making is it's just not fun, not fair, and not interesting to apply logic to an illogical system in order to preserve the idea that we have racial traits. Now, there are racial traits. Said it at the get-go. We have a racial trait that a character is small. What we want to ensure is that we are not creating a metaphor. D&D is rife with metaphors between a fantasy race and one of the cultures on planet Earth. And while this is true, you have to accept the fact that a Chihuahua is a breed of a race. A Chihuahua is a small dog. There are characteristics that we can say about Chihuahuas. There are characteristics that we can say about dogs. Okay? There are characteristics that we can say about people with certain backgrounds as far as height and weight, and those are things that are out there. What we have to be very careful of, and you can see the speed at which I'm talking just shifted way down because I'm stepping into some very, very tricky territory. Yes, there are ethnic characteristics of people. But we are one people. We are one Homo sapiens. We are the people who were nasty to the Neanderthals, who killed off our cousins who were much, much smarter. I forget the name of that group with much larger brain cases, where they're thinking the average IQ of this hominid species may have been in the 140-150 range for the average. So we are one people who've wandered in different directions. We've picked up some epigenetic characteristics along the way. Therefore, there's some familial characteristics. There's some things in which I'm like my dad, and he's like his dad before him, and I'm like my mom, and she's like her mom before her. And we all have these things, but none of us is worth more or from a better place. And it just seems stupid. I keep having to say this. So that's not what we're talking about when we're talking about racial characteristics. If you're going to let a player play a dog, don't apply any racial adjustments to it, because they have to play the game, and the entrance to play through the game is through the class system in Dungeons and Dragons. The game doesn't make sense. Trying to make it make sense in one narrow area, well, that's a political agenda that you're pushing. So I don't see the racial adjustments as an overly woke thing. I do see the inability to talk about the tendencies and ideas and concepts of different cultures. That's just that's pushing the pendulum a little too far in the needs of being a little bit mamby-pamby. But in general, I support the direction in which they're pointing the game. It's like, well, let's just make sure that the game is diverse and inclusive and people feel good coming to the table, can play the types of characters they want, and the game's not that well constructed. We need to worry about physiological differences between the races, and it's going to create some kind of incredulity. To me, the incredulity is baked right in. I have a character who's got a 20 intelligence and has been playing chess for 30 years versus a character with a 2 intelligence that's never played the game before, and the D20 crowns Captain Newbie world chess champion because of a couple of lucky rolls. That's the inherent problem with Dungeons and Dragons, is it's not that consistent. Don't try to make it so, but don't bleed the fun out of it, right? To understand what it is, and you can have fun with that system, recognizing what it is. So that's the end of my rant. I just wanted to put that out there, and hopefully that's useful in your discussions about racial ability scores. So if you like this video and like this type of content, please press like, please press subscribe. We are a game publisher that publishes a competing system to Dungeons and Dragons, not because we don't love Dungeons and Dragons, but because of some of these things that I'm talking about can be resolved. You can make a game that's better, faster, smarter, more versatile, more immersive than Dungeons and Dragons, that actually solves some of these problems. And by solving the problems, it doesn't make it the broccoli of role-playing games. It actually means that you've got a strong strong framework with which you can jump into whatever fantastic, really cool frickin' stuff you want to do, or whatever dark and gritty stuff you want to do, that the framework makes sense. And that's what we've built. Now I'm in the process of trying to build some of the sizzle into the game, some of the fun parts, to throw out some settings at you and show you what you can do. But my ideal goal is you're going to recognize the engine behind all of this, and you're going to say, you know, that game that I've always wanted to run, I had this idea about how to do magic and how to do people and how to do this and how to do that. Well, now you can do that thing that you've always wanted to do because you got a system strong enough to support it that then has the elements that you need. It gives you a vocabulary that's quick and fast. You have the ability to shrink and expand time. And once you realize these powerful mechanisms, the fact that you're returning these interesting distributions, then when you add the fantastic can be fantastic. And running feels different than teleportation. You don't have the turn-by-turn paralysis. So thanks so much for watching. If you like this video, click like and subscribe. We're a really small channel. I'm trying to develop some traction here and get some things out into people, because unlike the big guys, I think you guys are smart. I think you guys are clever. I think if you're given the right tools, you can make a great game, and we can have a community where you're put first, right? Dungeons and Dragons designed to sell product. And for me, I want to get the core systems out. I'll continue to publish follow-up things, but I don't want to be the curator of everything that's cool. There's so much cool stuff and cool people in this hobby. You might be one of those really cool and clever people, and I've got something for you. I've got something that you can sink your teeth into, and if you follow along to what the heck I'm talking about, you're the clever person that I want to put this system in the hands of, and I am so excited to see what you guys are going to do with it. That's what I just keep, spending a lot of time on this stuff. I want to see what comes back, and I think you guys are you're gonna knock my socks off. So I'm not wearing socks right now. Have a great day. Stay safe out there.